Do you have an appointment?
The name's Bond.
James Bond. Now that's a name gamers haven't heard in a very long time. Seriously, the last major Bond game came out in 2012, and that's 14 years ago, which honestly blows my mind because if you're around my age and grew up with the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1, it felt like there was a new Bond game every other year. Whether it was GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, Agent Under Fire, Nightfire, Everything or Nothing, Bond was always around. Now, IO Interactive, the folks behind Hitman, have decided it's time to bring Bond back and tell us the story of his very first mission. So the big question is, does 007 First Light capture that classic Bond magic, or should it have stayed in retirement? Let's talk about it. Story. So in 007 First Light, you're playing as a young James Bond before he becomes the legendary 007 that we all know. The game starts with Bond serving in the Royal Navy during a mission. Things go horribly wrong when his helicopter gets shot down, and Bond is the only survivor. And when he wakes up, he is stranded behind enemy lines, trying to figure out how to stay alive and get out of there. And that's when Moneypenny enters the picture. She's guiding you through the enemy camp and helping you get to safety. Once you're rescued, MI6 takes notice and recruits you into the newly reactivated 00 program. From there, the game shifts into Bond's training, and honestly, the training sections were some of my favorite parts of the story. Since Bond is behind the other recruits, Greenway has a couple of agents help him get up to speed, and the whole thing feels like an old school Rocky training montage mixed with 80s action movies, and I loved every second of it.
Well, that didn't take too long.
Hit 3 targets. Prove you belong here. Don't let it punch you, Christ. Now, I need to step up, boss. Give me 100. 1, 2, 3.
Course requirement is 30 seconds or less. Get to the flag. You know the drill.
For the love of God, isn't that enough misery for one night?
Well done.
And as your training progresses, you start getting thrown into some really cool spy scenarios. One of my favorites was a nightclub mission where you have to identify and make contact with the target while blending with everyone else. It's at this point where you really start feeling like a spy rather than just a soldier. And of course, training can only prepare you so much for once Bond gets sent on his first real mission, things go sideways and his skills are put to the test and secrets start unraveling. And before long, it's up to you to uncover what's really going on and prove that bringing back the 00 program was not a mistake. Overall, I thought the story was fantastic. It does a great job showing Bond's journey from rookie soldier to an elite secret agent. Now the gameplay. For the gameplay, I'm going to break it down into 5 different categories: shooting, navigation, stealth, gadgets, close quarter combat, and driving. Shooting. Now before the release, I heard a lot of people say the shooting was just okay, nothing special. But after playing it for myself, I'm really glad I didn't listen. The game isn't a non-stop shooter like Uncharted, Gears of War, or even some older Bond games. Most of the time you're sneaking around and gathering information. When things go loud, though, they go really loud. Whenever enemies draw their weapons, the game triggers out what's called a license to kill sequence, and these moments turn into cinematic shootouts where you're popping in and out of cover, landing headshots like you're John Wick. One thing I really liked was how interactive the environments are. You can shoot barrels, gas tanks, and pipes. This creates explosions, and if you're not sure what is explosive, your Q-Watch can highlight them for you. The game also brings back bullet time, which just slows everything down and makes pulling off those perfect headshots incredibly satisfying. You can shoot enemies in the hands to make them drop their weapons or shoot them in the legs to make them stumble, opening them up for a takedown. The ammo in the game is fairly limited, but honestly that wasn't a problem. Once a weapon is empty, you can literally throw it at somebody's face, stun them, and follow up with a melee takedown. It's surprisingly effective and always fun to pull off. Navigation and stealth. The movement in the game immediately reminded me of Nathan Drake from the Uncharted series, and that's definitely a compliment. You'll be climbing, jumping, and shimmying across ledges and squeezing through tight spaces as you make your way through missions. Now, what I really liked is how many different ways there are to approach objectives. If you want to take the direct route, Bond can bluff his way past guards using instinct points, and you earn these points by listening to conversations, gathering intel, and taking down enemies. If you'd rather stay hidden, you can lure guards away by calling out to them and then performing a stealth takedown. Or if you're like me and prefer avoiding unnecessary fights, you can create distractions, turn on a radio, activate a vacuum cleaner, make some noise, and the guard will go investigate while you casually sneak around them. The game gives you a lot of freedom, and I can really appreciate that, especially when it comes to approaching the missions. Now, the gadgets in the game, this is where 007 First Light absolutely shines. Once Bond joins the 00 program, he meets Q and gets access to a whole collection of spy gadgets. Before each mission, you can bring these 3 gadgets with you, so choosing the right loadout definitely becomes important. The Q Watch. This is probably the most important and useful gadget in the game. It lets you hack devices, distract enemies, and locate useful items around the environment. Now, the laser strap. This became one of my personal favorites. It shoots a laser from your watch, and you can cut open vents and unlock alternate routes. I basically never left the home without it, really, because you also need to get some unreachable collectibles. The dart phone. It's another fantastic gadget. You shoot an enemy with it and they suddenly feel sick and then run off to find somewhere to throw up. And it sounds ridiculous, but it works incredibly well for stealth players. And the shockwave camera. It's exactly what it sounds like. It looks like a regular camera, but when you activate it, it sends out a shockwave that knocks enemies backwards. The downside is that everybody nearby hears it and causes like a fight scene or a shootout. The smoke pod. It's perfect during firefights. Drop it, disappear into smoke, and suddenly you've got some breathing room when you're being overwhelmed by emanating fire. Now, later in the game, you can unlock the missile pen, and yes, it's exactly as it sounds, awesome. But it's literally a pen that fires a mini missile. And finally, there's the flash mine, which blinds enemies and gives you a chance to quickly take them down before they know what happened. And honestly, every gadget feels useful, whether you prefer stealth or action, and there's a loadout that fits your playstyle. Now, the close quarter combat, this was hands down my favorite part of the game. And as a former martial arts practitioner and amateur boxer, I always appreciate when games put effort into hand-to-hand combat, and IO Interactive absolutely nailed it here. You'll spend more time fighting with people with your fists than you will shooting them. The combat feels grounded and brutal, though. You can grab enemies, punch them, knee them in the clinch, slam them into objects, and perform environmental takedowns. And let me tell you, throwing somebody into a nearby object and knocking them out never gets old. The game also has a simple but satisfying counter system. Yellow indicators mean you can block and counterattack, while red indicators mean you better dodge with that left stick, left or right, and hit the X button because that attack is going to come through no matter what if you don't. Now, the entire system reminded me a lot of the Bourne Conspiracy on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, which is a huge compliment because that game had an excellent combat system. If there are multiple enemies, you can even throw objects to stun one guy while dealing with another. It's simple but effective. Now, the driving in this game. The driving sections are pretty limited, but honestly, I think that's for the best. Every Bond story needs a few cool car chases, and the First Light delivers on that front. The only thing I was slightly disappointed by was the lack of vehicle gadgets. No missiles, machine guns, or ejector seats here. Still, the chase scenes sequences are fun. You'll be driving off-road, hitting huge jumps, and causing all kinds of destruction along the way. And if I remember correctly, there's only 2 or 3 major driving sequences in the entire game, and I never felt like they overstayed their welcome. My final thoughts and conclusion are 007 First Light feels like a breath of fresh air. It's the kind of game we don't get very often anymore. A big story-driven single-player adventure that isn't trying to be a live service game or cram in a bunch of unnecessary features. Sure, there's a few visual hiccups. Some of the NPCs look like they are wandered in from the PlayStation 3 era, and there were some moments where the environments looked kind of hazy, but honestly, none of that really mattered to me. What mattered was how much fun I was actually having playing the game. Every time I stopped playing, I couldn't wait to jump back in. The missions are long, packed with content, and full of memorable moments, and most of the missions I played lasted anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, so there's plenty of game here. Now, from the story and the characters to the gadgets and combat and incredible set pieces, I was hooked from beginning to end. And I genuinely hope IO Interactive turns into a full series because they built something special here. The final score for 007 First Light is 10 out of 10. 007 First Light is everything I wanted from a modern James Bond game, and then some. Great job, IO Interactive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me across all sorts of social media at the Maritime Nerd. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Stop! I've got the detonator! Hold your fire!
What is this now? You want to blow us up
Yeah, thinking about it.
and destroy the asset? MI6 would never.
I'm not MI6.